Good afternoon. It is Tuesday, April 12th, and welcome to today's Teacher Librarian Digital Blast. The question that I have to organize my thoughts today is, what does the school library say about what the school thinks of its students? And I'll give you a little bit of background here in just a moment on why I'm posing this question today. But in the spirit of getting things kicked off right, I want to let you know that there are links in the showcase. If you just click and hover over the left side of your screen and click on the tabs, you'll see a whole host of links, and I'll show some of those to you in a few minutes. But you can also post questions and answers by clicking on the blue icon here. You can pose those questions and look at those links at any time, including in the recorded version of this broadcast. So, as I said, I have kind of a big question that I wanted to use to organize my thoughts today. And it really comes out of this idea that April is School Library Month, this month-long celebration about how school libraries transform learning. That is the slogan or motto from the American Association of School Librarians this month. And really thinking about, what does transforming learning meaning, and from whose perspective are we looking at that question of what the school and the library really thinks of its students. So that being said, there are a ton of resources, if you check the showcase for those links, for activities. There's actually a day-to-day calendar of activities that suggest professional development or in-library activities, ideas, quotes, and that for each and every day of the month. I'm also in the middle of a Twitter campaign. Each day of this month, you'll see a quote about school libraries and students and learning on my Twitter feed, and I'd invite you to take a look at that. It shows up on my Facebook page too. But in the spirit of this idea of transforming learning for students and how the school library really supports that, that's kind of where I wanted to start the conversation today. And I would be remiss if I didn't also mention that at the Library Association conference last week in Missoula, two of our own, Lisa Likens and Carrie Moore from Glacier High School, were recognized as the School Library of the Year for the Montana Library Association. And Governor Bullock also issued a proclamation in honor of School Library Month. So you can, again, look at my Facebook page or the Twitter feed to see some of that information, and always check out the Montana Library Association webpage for some great pictures from that award ceremony that was held last Friday. So, okay, here we go. We're forging ahead, transforming learning, and getting to this question. And some of you may be familiar with this quote. It was one of the first that I used this month in my Twitter campaign. But Harold Howe, what a school thinks about its library is a measure of what it feels about education. And by extension, I started to think about this quote in particular because I recently had the opportunity to sit down with a student who had some questions about transforming and making some changes to the library space in her school library because of a real need to provide comfort, to provide a sense of community, and to basically make some pretty simple changes that might have a huge impact on how well connected students felt to school and even to each other. So what we say by the environment that we create and the types of programs that we offer, those things can really make a difference if they're truly focused on students as well. So that brings me to that essential question. What does your library say about how the school thinks about its students? It's kind of an awkward question, but really the heart is about where student voice comes into the decisions that we make about what our library looks like, what the programs and services are, and how we truly support students in transforming their learning opportunities. So I like to think about the library not just as physical space, but in that digital space too. And that's definitely a layer that's added on top of how we form and implement our library programs. But I really see this from these four perspectives. What can students do? And how do we foster that so that students are learning? how can we foster and create those opportunities for them to be creative, to engage in creative activities, and in such a way that we connect to other students, to the teachers and faculty in our school, and even to the wider community. And I want you to think about too how that physical and digital library space can provide a place for students to reflect. Quite often in our classrooms, with the daily hectic pace of bell to bell learning, we don't always have that place, that space for students to actually reflect. And that gets back to that conversation I had with a student who was really concerned about, frankly, some mental health issues in the community, the loss of several students to suicide, and thinking about how do we create a space, and the library was that logical place for the students, for kids to connect, to create, to learn, but also to reflect and to know that they're supported in a warm environment. So that being said, I invite you to think about that, and how your library allows students that space for learning, creating, connecting, and reflecting. I really love this. Again, this is one of the quotes that you would have seen on my Twitter feed early in the month, but I think this also relates to the idea that there is a social responsibility for learning that is really fostered by libraries, and school libraries in particular. It's that connection between people and the ideas that they have and the actions that they can take to make a difference, for the greater good of whether it's just the school community or the wider community. So thinking about this, and in fact, I read a blog posting by Nikki Robertson, who is teacher librarian that I follow. Her blog post is entitled "It's Not About You," and this really carried home to me that idea that we need to look at what we offer and how we offer it, even our library space, from the perspective of our students, to connect with them in a way that actually allows us to kind of fulfill this call to action. You know, look at the furnishings, look at even the policies, look at the decor and the programs we offer, and look at them through that lens of the attitudes that might invoke in our students, or even faculty. What does that communicate about what we believe the role of the library is, and how does that atmosphere then foster and allow students to create, learn, reflect, and to actually connect with the students and others around them in their school setting. So that's my call to action. I did want to show you, I'll just pull it over here into the screen. This is the showcase that you can see if you hover over the left-hand side of your screen. I have lots of resources here that are about the physical space. In fact, last night there was a really powerful TL Virtual Cafe on organizing your library. You can watch the archive of that and see the great resources that those folks shared. I have a facilities page on my Google site. That's a featured picture of the Rossiter Elementary Library here in Helena. I also have a link to the Learning Commons wiki space. It's actually a set of pictures that kind of contrast how color, texture, arrangements, soft seating, hard seating, all of those sorts of things look, and think about how those pictures compare to what your library looks like, essentially. Another really great resource, an article that came out a couple of months ago about how a school library increased usage by 1,000%. Some ideas, and this speaks a lot about makerspace in particular, but that's another way to think about the programs, and how that communicates, how that sets up an atmosphere where students can create and to connect and to reflect. So, and I would be remiss if I didn't also show you the link here to the School Library Month their resource page with all kinds of graphics and PowerPoints, and there are free webinars during the course of this month. But I just wanted to make sure that you saw those in the showcase, and know that you can click on those links at any time, even with the recording of this session. Um, so, you know, it might be also in this call to action time for an informal survey, or even, like, maybe it's standing out in the hallway, or going out into the library with a clipboard and just having an informal interview with students, asking them about, how they feel about the furnishings, how welcome they might feel in the atmosphere. Or do something like a lunch bunch, invite a group of students from different grade levels in, get some pizza. Maybe the PTA can help you with that, or there might be, fun to be able to help you with that. But bring in a lunch bunch, do a mini focus group essentially, and talk to your students in particular about what they think of the library and what they think the library thinks of them. So with that, I'll leave you with that, and I will welcome your feedback. You can always get in touch with me, either by email or on Twitter, however you would like to connect. I always invite you to put in your suggestions for future topics and connect to the various professional organizations that we have in our state. But again, I'd really like your thoughts. Uh, how do you really assess what your library says about how the students, how about, excuse me, about how the school thinks about its students? I'd like to have your replies and look forward to visiting with you next month. Perhaps one of you would like to present with me about the outcome of your getting in touch with students. But with that, I thank you very much for your time this afternoon. Keep celebrating School Library Month. It's a great month to just call attention to the great things that school libraries do to support students in their learning. So with that, thank you very much, and we'll talk to you again soon.